David Blake'i sahneye davet ediyorum. David, stage is yours.
It's good to be here with you today. Now I want to quickly take you on a little bit of a journey on how I ended up here on this stage in front of you. And it starts, actually it goes back to when I was a student in high school in America. And I worked really hard as a student, had to really apply myself and worked very hard at it. And in America, we take our entrance exams our junior and senior year of high school, so 11th and 12th grade. And I studied very hard for it, and when I actually sat down to take it, it was a Saturday morning, I ended up doing pretty well. But that is where this journey starts, because when I had to take my entrance exams, I found the experience just so asinine and frustrating. To think that I had spent years as a student struggling and trying hard, and the test is about half of the equation for what university I'd be able to get into. And what university I would be able to get into was about half of the equation for what kind of job I would get following university. And it all just felt so frustrating that here I am, 17 years old, on this Saturday morning, 3 hours, and this is going to determine the half of my future trajectory. And it was at that point, feeling frustrated, that I began a study of high-stakes testing, of the model of higher education, and then something else happened. I realized that after all of these years of applying myself as a student, that curiosity, that study of the model of higher education, it was the first time I had ever learned something that a teacher hadn't directed me to learn. And I realized at that point that I had become an excellent student, but that I was, in fact, a terrible learner. And I set out on a quest to first become a great learner, and second, to make education and lifelong learning and a passion for learning my life's mission. And indeed, it has come to define everything I've done with my life since. I consider it part of my life's work, part of my mission, to make education more accessible, to drive the cost of education to zero, and to ultimately redefine what we mean by the very word education. What does it mean to be educated? And that is ultimately the question that led me to start Degreed. And this talk is not about Degreed, but I am going to share a little bit with you about it, because it sets so much of the context of who I am and what brought me here to you. Prior to starting Degreed, I helped to launch a university. The campus is in California. We also launched online. It's competency-based, meant to be very innovative. And the mission was to be the most affordable, accredited degree in the world. Now, it's done a good job towards that mission. I don't actually know if at the moment we hold that title, but they have done a very admirable job in driving high-quality, low-cost, accredited education and making it more accessible. But while I was in that field, helping to start this university, is really when the world around us began to change. And 2012 is the year that I started Degreed. That also happens to be the year of the MOOCs, when Stanford and Harvard and MIT would open up their doors and put their content online. And it began this transformation. So here I was living in Silicon Valley, surrounded by so much innovation. Boot camps and hybrids and e-learning and platforms and Khan Academy and Code Academy and Udacity and others. And yet, when I would ask anyone, tell me about your education, people only have one answer, and that is to tell you what university they attended. We have entered a world where we are learning all of the time. We are learning from a diversity of sources, and we are learning over the entirety of our lives. And yet, we define our education singularly with our academic studies. And it felt that this was both a need and an opportunity to be able to continue to develop ourselves in a more structured and formalized way, to be able to capture and answer for all of our learning. And that is what led me to start Degreed. Now I'm going to share just a 3-minute video and then talk just a little bit more.
Degreed, I was still using a lot of different sites to learn things, but there was no one unified tracking system, and so it was sometimes hard to find content that I had used previously or to figure out how far I had come. I was watching for kind of gut feelings in terms of improvement in certain areas and kind of focusing on one particular subject at a time. I wasn't able to really track things and measure my learning, and Degreed has helped me really bring a focus to all of that.
At Degreed, we believe that all learning matters. Whether you're learning in a traditional way, in a self-directed way, in a moment of need, just in time, or just because, it doesn't matter. Degreed exists to empower learners everywhere, to become experts in whatever their passions are, and to fuel their ambitions and dreams. Degreed is the world's first continuous lifelong learning platform that enables people to track all of their learning. TED Talks, articles, videos, books, assessments, certificates, courses, MOOCs, e-learning, all of it. Academic, professional, and formal.
Degreed has helped me interact with content on a more meaningful level. It allows me to achieve this sense of fulfillment. I've set a goal and I've fulfilled that goal. I'm Maddie, and I'm a lifelong learner.
Now, I do believe that we can trust people, that people are well-intentioned, that they do want to develop themselves. But even if we don't, it's sort of inevitable. You will never again be able to keep up with the pace of business and provide everything that everyone needs to know. The reality is that training and learning has been a command and control function. We decide at the top, we purchase at the top, we implement at the top, and we push it down to our organizations. And the reality is that in our information age, in our knowledge economy, the world is changing so quickly around us that it's impractical to think that we are going to be able to continue to keep pace. We have to trust our employees. We have to empower them. So first we have to trust them, then we have to empower them. And we empower them in 3 ways, with time, money, and resources. So again, to go back a little bit to what we do at Degreed. So we talk about learning is sacred at Degreed. We have salaried workers, we have contract workers, we have hourly workers, just like all of you. Everyone, learning is sacred. Whether you're an hourly employee or a salaried employee. We pay for you to learn, no matter what. You can learn on the job. We have just said it is sacred. You can do it anytime. We don't care. Money. We provide our employees with $1,200 for them to learn anything that they want. Above and beyond that, they have access to unlimited dollars, but it does have to be aligned with their job or the company. And third is resources. Learning is hard. Finding resources is hard. Part of what we can do is to help make available great learning resources to our organization. Personalize. It will not be about designing personalized training nor managing people's learning for them, but rather supporting them in their own personal learning strategies. We have to be able to create the infrastructure, be able to create the resources that people are enabled to learn what they need to. Now, I lied to you all a little bit. When I said that area, that strategic learning, it's an impossibility, I lied. We can get there, but you can only get there if you come from the opposite approach. If you start with what are our needs as an organization, and then try and find the alignment with your employees, you can't. They're too diverse, there's too many needs inside the organization, too many dreams, hopes, and ambitions that are unique to each one of your employees. But if you start with a culture where you empower people to learn anything at all, that you give them the resources and the line of sight and have that trust. The reality is that a majority of the learning we do is aligned with our jobs. It is aligned with our ambitions. Our ambitions are usually aligned with our employment. And that we can trust the individual to align themselves behind the organization. But only if we are clear in our mission, our strategy, and our objectives. They have to know what the organization is trying to do if they are going to be able to achieve it. I'm going to skip that. With the time remaining, I am quickly going to talk about Marlin Steele. So one of the biggest questions we get is, this is all fine and good for the knowledge economy, but I work in manufacturing. Or I work in duty-free and have thousands of retail sales employees. You know, how applicable is this to me? I love the story of Marlin Steele. They are not a client. This is from the Washington Post. And it really, I believe, fits with everything we've talked about a learning culture. So they, 15 years ago, bought a steel company that made bread baskets. Today, 15 years later, they're one of the most sophisticated parts providers for Toyota and BAE, which is a weapons manufacturer. They went from being an unsophisticated, all of their employees were making minimum wage. 15 years later, they were able to transform their business. They were able to increase sales 7 times. And how they did it was a matrix. They put up inside their organization 125 points of learning and all of their employees. And they rated them 1 to 4. It's public, it's in the warehouse, everyone can see it. And they aligned micro wages increases to every point along that spectrum. So every time I can see where I sit, I can see where everyone else sits, I know the objectives of the organization, but then it was up to me to apply myself and to skill myself up. And every time I did, I got a little incremental boost to my income. They went from the average employee making minimum wage to making over $100,000. They have increased sales by 7 times. To recap, how do we actually get a culture of learning? A learning culture needs to be centered on the employee. You need to empower them. It needs to be about them, not us. Ultimately, you want athletes. We will still need training. This isn't an argument against training. This is an argument for a learning culture. You are still going to need to know what sort of exercises your employees need to do. But in establishing the culture and getting your employees healthy in their learning, it doesn't ultimately matter. And third, for your employees to actually be empowered but then aligned, they have to know what you want and need from them. You invest in them, you empower them, make your objectives clear, and together we'll make it to that strategic learning culture. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Çok teşekkür ediyoruz kendisine. Türkiye Eğitim Günleri Vakfı'na TEGEM adına, TEGEM tarafından kendisi adına bir bağışta bulundu. Bu sertifikayı huzurlarınıza armağan ediyorum. Teşekkür ediyorum. Konuşmalarından dolayı çok sağ olun.